All right, so you've read the headlines about how AI agents will be changing the way we work, and you're wondering if the tech is actually ready for prime time. In today's episode, we'll talk about the 3 steps to make AI agents enterprise ready. So let's jump right in. All right, wonderful. Let's see here. Okay, hey, wonderful. So here we go. Folks, so great to have you with us. Welcome to What's the Buzz, where leaders and hands-on experts share how they've turned hype into outcome. Today we'll talk about the 3 steps to make AI agents enterprise ready. And who better to talk about it than someone who's actively working on that? Tomas Gogar. Hey, Tomas, thank you so much for joining.
Hello, Andras. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Hey, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what you do?
Okay, I'm Tomas Gogar. I'm currently CEO and one of the co-founders of Rossum. Computer scientist, AI scientist originally. We started the company during, I met the other co-founders in the same AI PhD lab. So really coming from the AI space before it was cool. And at
Awesome.
Rossum, we focus on automating the paperwork for large enterprises.
I've done quite a bit of work in that space before, and I'm always surprised how much paper there is in a business. So I'm excited to see that you're solving a real problem and a real need. And I'm also excited to have you on the show today. And by the way, thanks to the team at Rossum for sponsoring today's episode. Folks, if you're just joining the stream, drop a comment in the chat where you're joining us from. I'm always curious to see how global our audience is. And also don't forget to get your copy of the AI Leadership Handbook so you can learn how to put technology hype into business outcomes. Now, with that out of the way, why don't we play a little game to kick things off? What do you say?
Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. So this one is called In Your Own Words. And when I press the buzzer, the wheels will start spinning. When they stop, I would love to hear your answer. You have about 60 seconds for it. And let me know what's the first thing that comes to mind. So are you ready for What's the Buzz?
I am. Let's do it.
Okay, perfect. Here we go. If AI were a, if AI were a vehicle, what would it be? 60 seconds on the clock. Go.
I think it would be definitely electric car. Exciting, huge opportunity, but still immature in certain ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, and basically, I think it's very accurate. Like all manufacturers focusing on that, knowing that this is the direction, and big race how to make it real and impactful.
Wonderful. I love that. And indeed, right, it seems like it's this big race. If you follow the news and the headlines, it's crazy. I don't know how people are holding on, or if it even still makes sense to hold on, or if you just accept that there's so much stuff flying by. But anyways, so great answer. But that brings us to the topic of our show today, making AI agents enterprise ready and building them in ways that are enterprise grade. And I remember, this term of enterprise readiness can mean many different things to different people. And if you follow the headlines in the news, it seems like AI agents obviously are the big thing of 2025. Everybody is doing it. Everybody's been doing it for a long time, whether it's vendors or it's companies and practitioners. I think when you peel it back, you see it's a lot more nuanced. And just because you can run an agent on your own machine or deploy it somewhere in the cloud and tinker around with it doesn't necessarily mean it's enterprise grade or it's ready for production. But I know you guys at Rossum have been building AI agents and have just come out with the first one. So I'm curious, as a software leader and as a founder, what are you seeing there? What makes agents enterprise grade? What do you need to get right if you're building them?
It's a great question. Look, what we are seeing around is a tremendous hype, and I believe that the hype comes from the fact that you can build demos extremely quickly, right? Like really good looking demos. Like, you can take an agentic framework and build an agent with having an LLM deciding, and planning and, do a lot of things, and it looks extremely cool.
Mhm.
However, the challenge is that it looks cool in a demo, but what we are seeing is that usually when you try to deploy it in the real life production scenarios, there is a lot of situations where it doesn't work well. And the challenge is that usually with the current state of LLMs, if you let the LLM drive the workflow of that agent, it's unpredictable, right? Because of the nature of how LLMs are designed, how they work, they are non-deterministic, and they can hallucinate. So the challenge is that it looks cool, usually works well in 70% of cases, and it can have disastrous results in the 30%. And the challenge is that usually you don't know which 30% will go wrong. So usually it's great when, so what we are seeing around on LinkedIn and on social media are those like pre-recorded demos, because somebody just recorded the scenario where it went well, or cherry-picked situations where it actually works. But for enterprise readiness, it needs to be reliable
Mhm.
in the job in which you want to use the agent, right? And that reliability comes from a couple of properties. And I believe that there are a couple. For example, the agents need to understand the limits of their knowledge. If you are
Mhm.
an employee at work and you don't know, you are not certain, you have a way how to escalate to your boss, how to ask your colleagues. But in order to escalate, you need to understand the limits of your knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's where LLMs are tremendously bad, at,
Yes.
because like they are like those students that always try to answer. I think understanding the limits of the knowledge is one of the things. Then obviously you need to have certain types of guardrails for that agent to execute, right? And we know those guardrails from standard corporate world. Like I'm a CEO of a company, and I cannot go and increase my salary tomorrow, like on my own. I don't have access to that system, and I probably will need some approvals from, let's say, my board members, right? So
Mhm.
there is governance. I don't have. I'm a CEO and co-founder of the company, and I cannot access the data of our customers
Right.
for very good reasons.
Right.
So there are limits to us as humans, and humans are agents as well. And we need to build a system that AI agents have those limits and guardrails around them as well. So that could be the second one. And the third one is really just having the expertise of the task that you are doing.
Mhm.
And the expertise needs to be factual as well as procedural. How it is done in my company, employees know this. So
Right.
the AI agents need to like copy the human employees, I believe, with all their skills before they are really enterprise grade.
I have a question there because I'm really curious. For a long time we said let's not compare AI and humans. Let's not anthropomorphize. Now with agents, I also go into this mode a lot of times and say, well, people in a business are expected to do X, Y, Z, and like I said, they're expected to know what they know and figure out what are the things they don't know and where they need help. They need to read the code of conduct. They need to know things like IFRS and other accounting standards. Agents will eventually need to have some kind of knowledge or similar knowledge too. So comparing humans and AI, are we blurring the lines? And is that helpful or is that harmful in some ways?
I think that building this one-to-one relationship and like plugging them, like I think that to really deploy them on scale, at scale, um, for the corporate structures, it's actually helpful if we model an AI agent as a replacement of a human.
Mhm.
Okay. So for example, but there might be different setups. So imagine for me, if I have an AI agent that needs to be supervised because of, let's say, a lack of the confidence skills, and I can still use an AI agent as a personal assistant to every employee.
Mhm.
That's fine. So we can suddenly say, hey, every employee has an AI assistant. Good. But whenever we will try to have those AI agents act autonomously, because that's what I believe is the holy grail,
Right.
the best way how to plug them to corporate structure is actually to have that as a virtual employee.
Mhm.
Because that allows you will not change your corporate structure just because of AI agents. You need to plug them somewhere, let's say in certain processes. And the best way to do that is to do that in this way, like as a replacement, or like, widening your team
Yes.
with
That
those.
that makes a lot of sense. That resonates, right? So we have these familiar structures of how teams and organizations and companies are set up, and it helps us, use similar concepts now with these pieces of software that can do more than just follow basic rules. Now, there was something else that you mentioned around we need to teach them or tell them what are the limits of the knowledge and putting guardrails. How do you do that? I mean, we've or probably many of us have seen these basic prompts. You're a helpful customer service agent, and you do X, Y, Z, and if you don't know, then you escalate. Is that how you do it, or how do you put these guardrails in place? What does it
So
mean?
I hear you. Some guardrails are simply like, I don't want to say physical because they are actually virtual, but like I simply cannot do certain things. I don't have the access rights to this file. I don't have user rights to do something in my SAP instance, right? Like, so very similar guardrails to human employees.
Yeah.
But that needs to be executed on the, let's say, API layer, the API layer that the agent is using, right? However, what I was talking about before is the limit of my knowledge comes from the ability to estimate my own confidence in my decision. And that is something that cannot be solved by the prompt. It can't be, and we've proved that many times here at Rossum.
Yeah.
For that, we need to change how LLMs are actually working on the next generation of Gen AI, because the design of LLMs simply doesn't allow you to come up with something like calibrated confidence scores, if I try to explain it in technical terms, because it just tries to generate the answer but doesn't assess its confidence in the answer. The fact, if you try to prompt it, tell me how confident you are, it will not work. It's not what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think that makes it a lot more tangible in seeing that it does come back to basic principles of security, of architecture and design, and you simply don't have access to this data. Right? It sounds so obvious, but when you talk about you need to have guardrails in place, or you need to tell it what to do and what not to do, I think then it's more nebulous. So great to see that it can be as simple and as tangible as that. And by the way, I'm looking at the chat, so we have folks joining from Luxembourg, from Dubai, from many other places. So excited to have you with us. Also, if you have a question for Tomas, please put it in the chat and we'll pick it up in a minute or two. That's one of the benefits of having this as a live stream and engaging with both the guest and the audience. Now we've talked about agents being similar to employees at a minimum on a conceptual level as we think about these new capabilities. what does that actually mean, and what does it look like on a day-to-day basis, from maybe where we are today to where you are seeing things go in the next couple of quarters or the next year or 2 years? How will people work with these technologies?
So every company defines it differently. We at Rossum define AI agent as a virtual colleague you can delegate work to. Okay, very simple definition. And you typically delegate the work to a colleague using natural language, or in more structured processes by like sharing standard operating procedures and telling them, hey, this is how this particular job is being done here. So you delegate the work, and you expect them to finish, to do their job kind of end to end, right? And when they are not confident enough, you expect them to escalate to their manager. So I do believe, and we are seeing it, let's say in our deployments, is that you will have corporate structures there. You have a manager, and that manager has, let's say, some direct reports, which can be either human or AI agents. And the way it can work is that the AI agents will do their part of the job. It can be anything. In our case at Rossum, it's, for example, processing some paperwork tasks. And when they are not confident enough, they, let's say, in the first instance, escalate to their human colleague, to their human peer, right? So you can imagine a clerk, that an AI clerk that is doing some paperwork job, and if not confident enough, it escalates to human clerk. And if the human clerk is not enough, then they escalate to their manager. And if the manager is not confident enough, they can escalate even higher. So I do see them working side by side, as an outcome of that, you'll have smaller teams that can actually handle more work, right, as a team. But I do see that in the future, in the close future, like couple of quarters or a year, it will be more like a mixed team. That's what we are seeing in our deployments. Let's say that the AI is able to handle like 60-70% of the cases on its own. If it can't, it escalates to human colleagues. It learns from them as well. And there are cases when even human colleague doesn't know, and then they escalate to the manager. So I see them working side by side.
Now, how do you see that work across different departments? Say maybe you have a sales order that needs to be scanned, or you have a production order, or you have a bill of lading in their different departments. How does that work? Are agents going to collaborate with each other and maybe even on the same platform? If they know I have an agent here for sales and I have one for manufacturing and planning, do you envision them collaborating and figuring things out?
Yeah, sure. I think it's needed, because like I think the premise is that the expertise, right? Like I'm an agent that does X, and part of my job description might be, if something happens, I need to involve some other team members. And I think that the basic premise should be that I don't know who it will be. Will it be a human or another agent? Like I don't know. And that's the way to build it, because that's the way how you can gradually scale it. I think here the analogy to self-driving cars works pretty well. We could build self-driving cars by rebuilding the whole infrastructure, changing our roads, changing our crossroads. But it's huge infrastructural change that would need to happen overnight to really have an impact, right? Yes. Impossible. So instead of that, we use intelligent agents, intelligent cars, that can use existing infrastructure and can live next to the cars driven by humans. And you don't care, because we might be driving behind each other on the highway, and one of us will not be driving because it will be self-driving car, but the other one doesn't know. So I think that this is the way how you can gradually deploy it, right? And the self-driving car analogy works here as well, like because it's first it works on the highway or during parking, and later on it works in a small Italian town where driving is extremely difficult. So I think it's needed for gradual deployment to kind of copy the corporate structure and not assume if the job description involves communicating with somebody, being internally or externally, you cannot assume whether it will be a human or another AI agents pretending and communicating like human.
I really like that analogy to self-driving cars and the similar conditions that exist, right? And as long as they're safe, or maybe even safer than a human driver, right, that meets the standards that authorities and departments of transportation and so on set. So similarly, right, if we know that agents will behave according to certain rules, or that they don't go crazy or break out of their little box, right? That analogy works really, really well. One other thing that I'm wondering there is, do we need like a second address book for agents, right? Today, if I'm in a business and I'm stuck, I know I need somebody in procurement. Maybe I'm new to the organization. It's a larger company. I don't know everybody personally. I can ask around and say, well, who should I talk to for this procurement question? Maybe they point me to the right person, or they point me to a generic inbox or submit a ticket or something like that. But eventually I get to a person. Next time I have a question, I call this person directly. I send them an email, say, hey, you were able to help me last time. Can you help me again? Do we need something like that for agents too? Kind of like a register or like an address book to know this agent can work with that one, but don't use this, that sort of thing. I mean, there are some protocols and standards being proposed by some of the vendors. How do you see that working? That agents even know that there are other agents surrounding them?
I think the only difference to humans is that agents will be better in using APIs. It's kind of unnatural for us, right? But at the same time, I do believe that they will also need to be able to use the channels that the humans are using, exactly because of this coexistence. There will be a phase where we will coexist next to each other. We see it in the paperwork jobs, right? So you need to have, obviously it's good in calling APIs, and for that APIs it probably needs an address book. But for non-API ish communication and collaboration, it needs to have user interfaces and address books like humans do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I'm looking at the chat and I see Karina put two messages there. One saying, hey, agents don't think or understand their tools for specific tasks, and when we know those limitations of these tools, we can develop safeguards and eliminate them. So validation against trusted databases, methods for detecting when an LLM is operating outside its training domain, and so on. How do you approach that at Rossum? I think security was one point that you mentioned, but are there maybe others?
Yeah, look, guardrails are easy, right? The physical guardrails, you don't have access to this, you have access to that. That's easy. But we at Rossum, because we are narrowly focused, right, on specific type of supply chain paperwork, we've built a different type of LLM. We call it TLLM, Transactional Large Language Model, that is trained specifically to process transactional paperwork. And because it's such a narrow domain, we were able to build it in a way that it can actually assess its own confidence reliably. So the brain behind Rossum has the ability to assess its confidence, and when it's not confident enough, it asks the humans. So that's a big safeguard, like a big one. We are now releasing functionality that is specifically designed like a reasoning functionality, which is able to intelligently interpret data on the documents. But again, with ability to assess its confidence.
Mhm.
But this is not easy, and we are able to do that just because our domain is fairly narrow. It's not known currently in the research community how to do that in a generic Gen AI setup.
Mhm.
Our paperwork task is simpler, and that's why it allows us to build type of AI that is able to do that. But in traditional LLMs, we currently nobody has that, and that's I think that's the big next holy grail to chase if we really want to live in that dream where we have really truly autonomous AI agents that are also very generalistic. You know?
No, that's exciting. I love how you described it, right? And because you're staying focused, you're able to do that on a very specific task and do it really, really well. Now we're getting close to the end of the show, and I was wondering if you can summarize the key 3 takeaways for our audience today, Tomas.
Okay, the 3 main takeaways. Like, first, number 1, like just be a bit skeptical to the overhyped AI demos that you see out there. Demo is usually, especially in the current age of Gen AI, it can be very, very far from the real production usage. If you are deploying these AI agents, choose wisely where you are deploying them, either in a setup where you will have human supervision, or in a setup where the AI provider can guarantee the sense of confidence before you really let it run autonomously.
Yeah.
And I think the third one, like at the same time, like let's and that goes to the AI vendors. Let's keep innovating the fundamentals of AI. Let's not just rely on the current LLMs because there is so much they can't do and will not be able to do.
True. Awesome. I love that. Maybe before we really wrap up for good, I see there's one more question in the chat around whether in this agentic AI era, we will still need to have a graphic user interface, or how that will work, or are we going back to MS-DOS and putting our commands in a command prompt? Where do you see that going?
I think the answer is both. There will be a lot of reality is that there will be a lot of vendors that will be fighting this change and will close their APIs and so on and so on. So we'll probably have both API way as well as the user interface way.
Wonderful. All right, Tomas, thank you so much for your insight. It was a pleasure having you on and hearing and learning about how you are approaching this and where you're seeing the opportunities with agentic AI, and also how you make sure that it stays relevant and responsible as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you.
All right, wonderful. See you next time for What's the Buzz. Bye-bye.